Hi everyone, I'm here with Keisei Miyata, also called Miyata-san, in Tokyo in Japan, and we are in a fugu restaurant, right?
Yes.
So could you tell us what is a fugu restaurant?
All right, fugu restaurant. It's better to show, I guess.
Yeah.
These are the raw fugus. In English, it's called blowfish, and it is well known that sometimes people die because of the poison hidden in the. I think it's in the kidney. So it's really delicious, but we have to be careful where to eat it. So don't go to a cheap fugu restaurant place. Make sure you are in the right venue.
Some people actually died eating that thing.
Yes.
Good to know. That might be the last interview of Seedstars World right now.
But it doesn't happen often, so don't worry. It's very safe.
That's why we did the interview before eating the food. So, good to know about fugu. So you're Director of Business Development at SOW, Sense of Wonder.
Yep.
Could you tell us a little bit more about what is SOW?
All right. So SOW is a boutique type investment firm, so far focusing on investment in real estate. We have launched a first fund in 2012. Now it has reached to $400 million on the asset management, and also we're aiming to build this up to $1 billion by 2015. And aside from that, we also invest in small, medium-sized corporations as well as startups. And so far, we have made investment into healthcare industries, tech companies, e-commerce businesses, as well as fashion apparel business.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you've invested in a wide range of different industries.
Yes.
What industry to you is the hottest at the moment in Japan?
For us, we believe it's going to be e-commerce. And this is going to be our focus for the coming 2-3 years. And the logistic part is going to take a big role in this business. So a combination of e-commerce and logistics is going to be one very hot startup for us.
Do you have some examples of like really hot e-commerce websites right now in Japan?
For now, I cannot tell that because we have that in mind and we're going to bring it to the market. So once we show that to the market, I will definitely come back and I will welcome you to have an interview.
So the next hottest thing
is coming from SOW, all right?
It's coming out, so it's in the pipeline. So I'm interested to know a bit more about, we've traveled to a lot of different countries at Seedstars World. Yeah. We experienced many different cultures. Mm-hmm. And I've been told you've been a very traveled Japanese person. You've lived in many different countries. How many different countries have you lived in?
Around 6 countries. To name it, UK, Pakistan, Zimbabwe, US, Spain, maybe more than that, Sweden, and also Ethiopia. Those are the countries that I've been living.
Places where even Seedstars World didn't go to. I mean, that's a lot to say. So you've experienced all these different cultures, and I'm interested to understand, what's the key difference with the Japanese culture? The Japanese business culture is very, very different from any other cultures in the world. So what are the main key differences? What are the things you do, you don't do when you do business in Japan or when you do business with Japanese people?
I think the very bottom line is going to remain same. Like business, in business, relationship, trust is the most important thing. That applies in Japan as well. The thing that creates or build up the trust might be a little different. The reason why I'm saying that is, as you two have been in Japan and maybe sense the service level, it's very high level. Whenever you are trying to send something, you can pick a date, pick the time, and they will be there. You're not gonna miss it. That is the service level that is required. But sometimes when you are abroad, you don't get that, and you lose trust by doing so. So like being late at a meeting is very rude in Japan as well. Normally you have to be there like 5 minutes prior to the meeting, and that is the kind of the culture, Japanese way. And you feel late, they say, all right, they cannot meet on time. That means if you ask for some business, then they're not gonna be producing it on time. So that kind of mentality, the culture.
We actually showed up late at our first meeting.
Yes, I'm not gonna blame on that.
You're just gonna blame on that. So we're foreigners. We don't know.
Yeah.
So there's one thing. The other thing is something we've been reading about, and that apparently has been impacting the startup scene in Japan, is the risk adversity kind of behavior. So there is a lot of Japanese tend to be more risk adverse, as we've been told, than in other cultures, which would have been keeping people from becoming entrepreneurs. Do you see that changing for the past few years here in Japan? Do you see more people taking risks, leaving their company?
Definitely I see the changes here. It used to be like in an MBA course, it is taught that Japanese corporation provides lifetime employment. And that is the case for the past like 45, 50 years. So normally when I was brought up, my father, my mom said, go to a good university, go to a big corporation, and that is the only way to success here in Japan. But nowadays, these big corporations is kind of having a tough time. Basically, they're facing a lot of global competition, and it has to be changed. And especially for the students right now, the young guys, the young generation here in Japan, they face those problems here. We don't see that much of employment, active employment from the big corporation anymore. So now they have to find their own jobs, and for that risk, they sense it by themselves. Even though your parents say, all right, go to a big corporation, they don't feel safe there. So that's why I see a lot of change, that they are open-minded and they're more aggressive in terms of taking risk and starting up a new company and creating their own jobs.
And is this well seen by the families around them, by their friends, by their peers? Or is still just a few bunch of people that are willing to take this risk, or it's just society seem to be accepting that?
I would say it's still few, but I see a lot more supports from the government as well as from the corporations. Having said that, normally if you start up a business, your main exit plan is going to be an IPO. But nowadays in Japan, you can find exit selling your company to a big corporation or a medium-sized corporation. And those variety of exit strategy is definitely a plus for a new entrepreneur here in Japan.
So we mentioned starting a business. How easy is it to actually start a business in Japan? So people here can understand, if you ever want to come to Japan, set up your own company, how easy or how hard it is to actually set up a company?
Especially for a foreigner, language barrier is going to be the biggest issues. Other than that, setting up a company, regardless of the high tax issues, I think it's pretty. The procedure is going to be very easy. But to penetrate the market I think it's a different story here. Most of the service, a high-level service, is already found here in Japan. So in terms of penetrating the Japanese market, it requires a very good marketing and adjustment as well.
Right. So you mean customers here in Japan don't trust foreign companies, so you need to be a Japanese company? That's something that we had today at the event, where Americans told us, so they set up a company here in Japan, but they're not targeting the Japanese market. They are using the Japanese brand to sell in Australia, because the Japanese brand is very strong in Australia. And then once they have built up some reputation, they can come into Japan and sell. So is this something you see a lot? Like, you need some reputation to be able to sell in Japan?
Yes. It's a bit shame part of Japan, but normally they believe in big names. It's so easy for them to say, all right, this well-known company is trying to sell this, why don't we buy this? It is easy to process and get approval internally. But for those big corporations, to sell to these big corporations, and if you're very small companies without trust, it's a very hard thing. So that's why once you are successful outside and bring that back into Japan, that is one way to get to be successful here in Japan.
So that's a major drawback for young entrepreneurs, right? When they create their company, they know that they can count on a huge customer base of people that are really willing to buy their product. So how do they overcome that? What are the strategies they can use to actually still get customers, even though they have no reputation, no track records, no one knows about them?
Yes, exactly. That is the point why we exist here. Like company like us, we have very good connection with big corporations here in Japan. The reason why is because I myself was an ex-banker. So at the time when we were in the bank, we were always approaching to CEOs of the companies. So we have very good networks right now. So what we can provide to these small companies is, as long as we believe in those products, those services, we can promote it. We can do the marketing part. So getting a good network and getting a good partner is the key to penetrate the market in the right way.
Yeah, that's something we heard. I read of a very big French payment company that penetrated a lot of different markets around the world, and when they came to Japan, they failed really, really badly, and they had to hire a guy who is half Japanese, half French, and understood both culture to be able to succeed. So this is something you see a lot here. You don't see foreigners coming straight into the country and set up their business. Do they always have to work with Japanese?
I think they should work with the Japanese for the first. If you're well experienced in Japanese culture and the way of the business, then it should be okay. But if you're the first comer and it's the first time here in Japan, definitely you should partner up with a local corporation.
Have you dealt with? Did you have to deal with some foreigners already at Sense of Wonder?
We are in touch with a couple of companies, and we also invested in a U.S. corporation. And we invest in them, and we're helping out penetrating the market here in Japan as well.
So what are the main nationalities you see coming here in Japan?
I think for us, our focus is in Europe and in US so far, but most of the one that we can see is probably, well, Europe and America, yes, but also from Asia nowadays.
Okay. What part of Asia?
I would say Korea.
Korea?
Yeah.
So it's interesting you talk about that because we've heard a lot about the rivalry between Koreans and Japanese. That's currently a very, very big thing. Like Samsung wouldn't be that big here in Japan because it's a Korean brand. So what kind of ties do you have with Korea actually?
Probably the game industry is the most common thing in Japan. It's a huge market here in Japan as well as in Korea. So for a gaming industry in Korea, they're likely to come into Japan as well. And one of their exit is for Japanese corporation because most of the Japanese corporations, they're trying to diversify their business. So the big corporations are trying to acquire a lot of interesting new startups. So and those targets are not only for Japan, but also open to Asian corporations as well. So that's why, and I see quite a lot of Korean companies acquired by Japanese corporations.
What about the business relationship with China?
Oh, tough question here.
Tough question. There are some trades, obviously, between the two countries.
Yeah, it's been a huge relationship, but nowadays, because of the political issues here, for Japan, they're trying to diversify their portfolio. It used to be concentrated to China, but now Vietnam, maybe more towards Southeast Asian countries.
Right. Yeah. So we're talking Thailand, Vietnam,
exactly.
Cambodia, Myanmar, those kinds of markets where you have much better relationships.
Exactly.
Okay. Now I'm interested about I'm going back and forth to different questions, but I'm interested about this whole thing about the English language. It's not easy to find startups in Japan that can pitch and that are willing to actually present in English and that actually speak English. Where do you think that comes from? I think you see more people speaking English maybe in Korea a bit more.
Yes.
Where does it come from that in Japan there's not that many people who speak English?
I think one biggest reason here is that Japan itself has a big economy size. So even for startups as well as big corporations, by dominating the Japanese market, that would be enough to be big, right? So there wasn't that much of global focus in the past. That is what I see. And having said that, probably the needs of speaking English was a little less than the other countries. I think that is the fact. And it is a kind of a shame that because for Japanese, most of the people here at least learned English for 10 years, I guess. So learning 10 years of English and not being able to speak them well is something that has to be changed. And now I think a lot of university they're trying to push more of exchange program where university students go to overseas and learn English and live English. So I think we're going to see a lot of change here as well.
We see that the private sector in Japan is quite strong, right? Even in the public transportation, I mean, what we would call public transportation back in Europe is actually completely privatized, right? Different companies, different trains, even in the subway, you face different companies when you go here in Tokyo. Do you feel that the fact that the private sector is extremely strong and there is very few involvement of the government in the whole business area is helping entrepreneurs or not?
The good part is that, as you have mentioned, a lot of industry is privatized. So most of the big corporation is a private corporation. And having said that, for startups, these corporations are trying to acquire these startups. That is a good sign, I think. For startups, without any exit strategy, exit plan, it is very tough. I guess I'm repeating that again, but these big corporations, the private companies, are now willing to do business with these startups. So that is a good sign, I think.
It's interesting. So you see a really strong. Whenever an entrepreneur starts a company, even though it doesn't necessarily have much traction yet or any customers, there's already a strong link with corporates.
Yeah.
In whatever case, you can be working on your own or like working against the big corporate. So you have to work with them.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that? Some examples, maybe.
Because it's kind of a marketing strategy. Maybe not an example, but like one of the pitch that we had today, they're trying to focus in a B2C type of solution, but in order to reach to the C, the consumers, most of the time, in a marketing perspective, it is a good way to involve another B corporation to do the marketing. And that is how startups should use these big corporations. So you sell your products, your idea to these big corporations, and they will do the sales part. And that kind of alliance is going to, I think, it's going to work well here in Japan. Especially having said that, the trust issue is very big. If you can persuade these big corporations with your ideas and your services, there's a big chance of being a very successful company.
So looking at the e-commerce website that you're looking to launch and to build, that means you have the website built and you'll need to have the logo of some big company in the background so they can sell. Otherwise, they would never sell even one item.
Our customer is going to be the big corporations. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
So we're going to have those logos as well.
Okay. So, Japan, for a very, very long time in history after the Second World War, was the main economic powerhouse of Asia, right? When China was not even anything yet, right? And then China went on the rise, and suddenly Japan started to lose economic power as well in the area. I was reading in the news that the Prime Minister of Japan has made a point to bring back competitivity in Japan and to bring back Japan as the main economic power in Asia. Do you think entrepreneurship has a role to play in that, and what kind of role?
Very interesting question here. It's going to be a very interesting role, very important role for startups here in Japan, especially for those big corporations that are kind of losing the power that we used to see 30, 40 years ago. And having said that, we have to have more startups, successful startups found here in Japan that will lead the economy of Japan in the future. Yeah.
So a way to build a stronger economy, we say in Europe, is work harder. That's what we've been told lately in Europe. Work harder. Maybe to earn more, but to make a stronger economy. In Japan, you work already a lot.
Yes.
Could you tell us, I think there's been a lot of change in the kind of like workload of like people in Japan. But we know entrepreneurs work really hard.
Yeah.
But in companies, there's been a lot of mutation in the amount of work they have. And how do you see that changing for the past 10, 15 years in Japan? Do people work still more and more as we imagine it, or it's less?
It remains the same. The thing is that for some companies, it is governed more strictly, so it is getting difficult to overwork too much. but even then, we still work hard. Yeah. So we don't see that much of a change in that part, which is one part is that Japan had a very tough time after the bubble, so we did cut labors as well. So we, with a smaller number of labors, with the same amount of work that has to be done, that kept for these employees to work hard, continuously work hard, even though they're not sometimes allowed to work that hard. So that is a tricky part, but that is how the mentality of the Japanese, that whatever we have to do without any reason. So we don't refuse, like, I have this holiday, I need to take the holiday. We don't have that mentality. We share the goals, so like go with the company. So when whatever has to be done is done, even if it takes long hours, I guess.
When you say working a lot, could you give us an approximation of how many hours the average Japanese work per week? So in France, 35 hours per week. In Japan?
All right. Just let me just calculate quickly. The most very condensed working hours will be like 4 hours sleep a day. So that means like
20 hours of work per day.
Yeah, and including Saturday and Sundays sometimes.
So that means about 80 hours.
140 hours maximum.
140 hours.
Yes.
Up to 140 hours.
That is the maximum. That is the maximum. Yeah.
Well, yeah, obviously
Yeah.
you need to sleep as well. This is quite incredible. What about holiday?
Holiday, normally you don't take holidays. I mean, you have like 20 days vacation day, but we see a lot of people not taking the full 20 days, maybe 5 to 10 days, but not the whole 20 days. Yeah.
So it's like entrepreneurs life, but in a corporation,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah.
Pretty much. There was this story back about 10 years ago, the story of Life Door with the CEO. There was a huge scandal around the CEO doing fraud, going to prison, and it seems it's quite impacted the image of the startup scene back in Japan at the time. Do you think, have there been such stories since then? Do you see the startup scene kind of recovering from that, or could a new story like this really affect the startup scene here?
I think it had an impact for sure, but it is recovering. The thing is that I think we are in the learning curve here. It is a good sign that all these corporations, the startups, are trying a lot of things, and we're not still.
That's part of it.
So maybe we should divide some of the food.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's so amazing. Both food
Yeah.
and fish.
It is raw, so it's we better eat it fast. That's the only problem.
We take that.
So definitely it's recovering here. It's a learning curve here. I think we have seen the same issues in US as well, but they recover from that. And once we overcome these issues, I think we still see a lot of startups in Japan, and there are a lot of money going to those startups as well. So definitely it's recovering, and I hope there's not going to be another cases like this, but well, we'll see.
So you mentioned e-commerce earlier in the interview as one of the top industries on which you want to focus and where the startup scene is becoming really, really big. But Japan, for a long, long time, have been known for hardware products, right? Sony.
Yeah.
The made in Japan on like hardware product is like, it's big, big brands. Like made in France for flag brands, right? Made in Japan is the most reliable stuff you can find on earth, right? Do you see, usually until now, it's been a lot of big companies. I mentioned Sony and there are many others. Canon, I think, is also.
Yeah.
So do you think there is some opportunity there for startups? Do you see more hardware startup kind of popping up, or it still remains the arena of the big companies?
I think the current like Sony and like Canon, could be NEC, all those producers, the manufacturers are now being kind of replaced by Chinese corporations and Korean corporations. They are facing a hard time. to overcome those issues, especially in the hardware area, it's still a hot area. And for startups, there's a lot of chance in creating some new added value hardwares. Those a product with a lot of ideas. Those kind of startup is something that we are expecting to see more, and we love to see more. Yeah.
10 years down the line, we are like 10 years later in the startup scene in Tokyo. What do you think, the startup scene is going to look like in 10 years here in Tokyo? What would you expect the biggest highlight to be in 10 years time from now?
For startups, well, 10 years later, what I foresee is that there's going to be lots of big corporation that was found in 2014, 15, 16, around there, and those corporations will be creating a new ecosystem for these startups, and we see a continuous growth in these startup companies. That is what I want to create after 10 years later, I guess.
Thank you very much. Any more?
No.
I think it's time for food. They've been serving all this food on the table. The blowfish is everywhere, the fugu fish is everywhere. So thanks a lot, Keisei.
Thank you a lot.
Arigato.
Arigato.
Arigato. And
enjoy the
to
blowfish.
make you hungry.
Cheers.
This is the food we're going to enjoy right now. See ya.
See ya.
Oh,